Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Turning Towards Life. This is Lizzie and Justin. It's Sunday morning, as usual, UK time. And we're here with yet another wonderful source, this time chosen by Justin. Maybe you're new here, and we need to tell you the rhythm of how this works, which is that each week Justin and I alternate our source choice. So this week it's a source choice by Justin, and we launch into our conversation with no rehearsal other than having read, each of us has read the source before we've got here, as have maybe you if you have received it ahead of time if you're in the Facebook group. And then we see what happens between us. So it's an adventure every Sunday morning for us. And thank you for being with us. Thank you, Justin, for being here. Thank you for choosing all the sources, having your bank of sources ready at the ready as well. And I think we both do this, Justin. We wander around the world and in the digital world and in the physical world on the lookout for things that would be good for this conversation. And it's quite a particular selection process that I don't know. I could write down what it is, but I think you and I both have feelings about what would be a good source and what wouldn't be. And I just appreciate that sensibility and that thank you for always being on the lookout as well for everything that for anything that might be good for us here. And this week, this is your lovely choice by Mark Nepo, and I love Mark Nepo, so I'm very, very glad to be embarking on this with you.
Thanks, Lizzie, and welcome everyone, whether you are someone who's just joining us, as I know people are, because they keep on telling me, Lizzie, that they've stumbled across us or they're deliberately heading our way. So you're so welcome if you're one of those people, or some people have been traveling this path with us for well over 5 years now, and you and everyone on the in-between is welcome too. And a source, I was thinking, was you were talking about sources, Lizzie, that a source is like obviously it's a source of inspiration or a source of ideas or something, but it's also a source of life or a wellspring or a source, as in that way it sort of flows into this conversation and through us and beyond, who knows where. So very pleased to bring this. This was not in my bank of sources. This was read. I was in a group on a program last week, and the person who was running the program read this, and I thought it was brilliant, and I dropped it into the top of my list of sources. It sort of bumped its way up to the top rather than waiting. And I love Mark Nepo too. I went and did a little bit of research. So if you, for all of you who are with us, we have a website, turningtowards.life, which has, you can find all the recordings in podcast places, Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all of that. But there's also, we're also on YouTube and at turningtowards.life, all the conversations are there. So I went to turningtowards.life, Lizzie, and I typed in Nepo just to see. I often these days, because we've done 280 something, and I forget what we've included and what we haven't. So I typed in Nepo, and I found out that Mark Nepo is the person who we have brought more often, I think, than anyone else, apart perhaps from Mary Oliver. It's not that he's been with us very often. Out of 285 or so episodes, he's shown up maybe 6 times. So I felt absolutely fine to bring him, like he wasn't unfairly dominating in some way. There's still 270 something that aren't Mark Nepo. But his work is very excellent. And he's so often writing right into the heart of things that I know that we really care about. And so with thanks to Mark Nepo for your work. I really appreciate Mark's courage to write what he sees. It's one of the many things I appreciate about him. He doesn't hold back from sharing with us. And I suppose that's what we're also trying to do, Lizzie, is to not hold back from bringing whatever we see. And I know that when we do that, people, those of you who are with us, you get to see things too, not only the things that we've said, but the things that arise in you and in the in-between view of us. And often many of you go and speak to other people or share these sources with other people, and things happen there. So that's very delightful to know. So this, as you said, Lizzie, is on the Facebook group. It's also in the notes of all the podcasts, and it's called The Appointment. What if on the first sunny day on your way to work, a colourful bird sweeps in front of you down a street you've never heard of? You might pause and smile a sweet beginning to your day. Or you might step into that street and realize there are many ways to work. You might sense the bird knows something you don't and wander after. You might hesitate when the bird turns down an alley, for now there is a tension. Is what the bird knows worth being late? You might go another block or two thinking you can have it both ways. But soon you arrive at the edge of all your plans. The bird circles back for you, and you must decide which appointment you were born to keep.
What if on the first sunny day on your way to work, a colourful bird sweeps in front of you down a street you've never heard of? You might pause and smile, a sweet beginning to your day. Or you might step into that street and realise there are many ways to work. You might sense the bird knows something you don't and wander after. You might hesitate when the bird turns down an alley. For now there's a tension. Is what the bird knows worth being late? You might go another block or two, thinking you can have it both ways. But soon you arrive at the edge of all your plans. The bird circles back for you, and you must decide which appointment you were born to keep.
When I first heard this, and I'm sure there'll be something for me to say about this, maybe a little bit later whilst we're talking, I was most affected, Lizzie, by this last line that the whole poem builds towards, that you must decide which appointment you were born to keep. But actually, as you're reading, the place that lands most strongly in me, that I recognize so much, is being in the tension. That, that middle place where I've gone far enough to wake up from a sort of, because I think for me this isn't just about, in any way, just about how to relate to a job or something like that. It's about the ways in which we sometimes gradually, sometimes suddenly wake up from having been in a sort of habitual, taken for granted, this is the way things are way, and we catch out of the corner of our eye, or maybe straight in front of us, as something else that might be pointing in a fresh direction, a fresh kind of understanding of what it is to be in something, which could be a friendship or a relationship or some work or a project or a whole way of life. I think that tension of being in the in-between is something a lot of us know a lot about. We for many, many periods in life, we get the sense that something is flying ahead of us or has just flown past, and but there's a particular kind of hope and also a particular kind of pain of being at that moment of really not knowing, is the way I've been walking the way to continue walking, or is it worth risking something? Because that's what this middle bit is to be worth being late, is to risk something, is to risk how you might get seen, or risk what people might think of you, or risk what you think of yourself, in order to even begin to find out what's down the alley, long before we have to decide which appointment we were born to keep, which is an important one. And I wonder whether in the way that this Mark Nepo's writing sort of throws the contrast between going to work every day and the ordinary everydayness of it, and this possibility right in the last line of that there's an appointment we were born to keep that might be very different to the one that we're in, that sounds like and probably is some kind of the edge of some kind of giant change. That the ordinary everyday for most of us is learning to live in the in-between of not knowing how to tell whether the familiarity of the ordinary or the glimpse of something going down an alleyway is worth attending to. And that's not an easy place to live. And I think the in-between place, the not easy place to live, is actually a place that most of us live most of the time. And that maybe actually this is one of the things I'm sort of feeling now, even being in this kind of conversation, you and I together, is an ongoing way of exploring and turning towards being on the in-between, being unresolved, being unfinished, being always on the brink of something and maybe not being on the brink of something. And it feels important to name it, because I can see how you could read this poem as a kind of fantasy poem. Either you stay in your ordinary everyday work and do the same thing every day, and that would be terrible, or you follow the bird, and that would be brilliant. Actually, I'm sure that's not what Mark Nipe really means. But just to honour the complexity of being right in the middle of an unfolding life that you really can't tell which direction it's going to go or which direction we're going to go, is a sacred place. And we might ignore that it's a hard place too, as well as a very rich place. We might not pay attention to it, and we probably should. We should probably talk to one another about it, as we're doing now.
The thing I noticed most, Justin, you mentioned, this could be a relationship. As you were reading, and I had my eyes closed, and I was just letting the poem kind of, as you read it, take me into my imagination and my memories of life. And the thing I noticed was that all of my birds, all of my colourful birds in my life have been and continue to be humans. Like, when a human comes along and you go, hold on, I didn't know we could live like that. I didn't know I could be that generous. I didn't know I could be that outspoken. I didn't know I could know things to that extent that would be helpful to other human beings. And I feel like in each of those meetings, at some point on the timeline of the relationship, there has been this question of which appointment was I born to keep? Was I born to keep the appointment that I got born into? All of the background ancestral messages that I had been born into? Or am I at liberty to see what I could do to let go of some of those and pick some different values up, to pick some different choices, to understand the world in a different way? And this thing you're saying about the ongoing nature of this place is like, that question then doesn't get resolved. It's like an ongoing, this is all divergent. This person is completely divergent from this person. And one of them I've been in a relationship with for my whole life, and one of them I just met yesterday. And goodness me. And I think the thing I'm grateful for, and we've used this word in lots of these episodes, Justin, is the kind of the multitudinousness of us. Thank goodness I can be multiple, because I can be many different things, and I can cultivate different things in myself that maybe go against other things, but it doesn't mean that I necessarily have to betray other things. And I think one thing I've had to get used to is that the many times I've experienced the world as wanting me to be this or that. You have to be this or you have to be that, and you can't be both. And I really have been hypnotized by that for a long time and thought that was true. But now I feel quite changed, that this multiplicitousness is possible. And I can say, well, I am that, but I'm also this. And those are different aspects of me that come forward at different times. But I don't have to land anywhere. I don't like, unless there's, there's very few occasions where I have to say, this is my declaration, like a vote or something. But other than a vote, I don't really have to do that. And I don't have to say, I'm this and I'm going to stand by that and no one's going to move me off my position. So I feel really grateful for my acknowledgement of I can be many, not one or just a few, but I can be many. And then that also gives me permission to be open to all kinds of different realities and opinions and peoples, that open my spectrum of me up into way more than this is my identity, and I'm not gonna budge. And so then I feel, I don't know, like I can be changed, like I can look at someone freshly and say, well, who are you going to make me into today? What's going to happen today? And unless I'm voting, I really can allow that to be true, unless there's some decision to be made. But then when I get to those decision points, because I've been this multiplicitousness of a human, it's a different thing to stand there and make a decision than if I hadn't have opened myself up. So I'm in this appreciation of Mark Nepo's invitation for me to reflect on all of those birds that I have heard. Some of them I haven't followed, and some of them I have, and always the birds lead me in different directions, because I think the nature of there being a bird is that it's different to what I'm currently in, and I feel like they're always different to each other. And the more I'm willing to accept that, the more I'm willing to see this huge range of multiplicitousness that the humanness is. And then, at least if I've gone down the alleyway enough, I can see whether I'm up for carrying on down the alleyway. But if I never go down the alleyway at all, like if someone's different opinion, or if someone's different way of living, or if someone's different choices that they made, if I haven't even gone down the alleyway, I'm never even going to know what that looks like or what that feels like.
I'm appreciating very much the multiplicitousness, as you're calling it, that you're bringing into this. That there may be moments in our lives when it is this or that. Should I continue here or follow this? And somehow, it seems like to do one is to let go of the other. But it seems true that it's true of the poem, and clearly true of life, that rarely is it like that. And another way of looking at being in the middle is that we're in the middle of many, many of these all the time. That they're happening, and that maybe things I was thinking about. It's very wonderful the way you drew attention to the birds being people. I was very touched by what you said about how one of the things we can be for one another. I thought of the word beacon, that we can be beacons for one another. Like, we meet people who show us how it's possible to love that we'd never imagined, or how it's possible to be courageous, or how it's possible to be kind, or how it's possible to be true, or how it's possible to be in relationship. And so maybe one of the things that might happen is we might not notice. It's certainly possible, and I have certainly lived my life part of this way, and sometimes, and of course still, where I don't get that this person who's here is a beacon or a bird, and they're here. There's a chance for me to see something that I've never seen before by being in their presence, if I'll only at least walk down the alleyway with them. I don't have to leave all the streets I've been walking down to walk down the alleyway alongside them, and to take up this. It's such good language. I love it anyway, to say I didn't know it was possible to be this way yet. So other people can be that for us. And of course, what that also opens up is that we can be that way for other people. So what is it also in this poem to be the bird? What is it to be generous enough? Because the thing about the bird here, I'm thinking about how in the world as it is at the moment, with the way that social media, for example, which we're using here to get Turning Towards Life out into the world, has many gifts, but also very often has this very toxic quality of people saying to one another, you belong or you don't, or you have to think what I think, or you're a, any number of things. And there's sort of this polarization that happens because of the way social media works. That what this poem introduces us to is that we can be a bird for one another, that to make available something of me that you may benefit from, that you may never have seen before, is also not to demand that you follow me down the alleyway. It has to be okay that I can show you my beauty or my creativity or my courage or my wisdom or some way of living that I've got, and you have to be, I have to be to be the bird, I have to be one who's invitational and who really understands when you walk this far and no further, because your life is your own. That's the end here, is that you must decide which appointment you were born to keep, not the bird, not the work. Actually, the only person who can decide that is you. And instead of demanding from one another that we agree, that we see the world the same way, I'm really living right now in the joy of this phrase, I didn't know it was possible to be this. What a way to open ourselves to the world and give ourselves a chance then also to feel it's possible to be that. Do I want to be that? Is that life-giving for me? Is it in accordance with what I care about? Or does it give me a chance to care about things that I didn't know yet to care about? It's really hope-making for me to remember that that's what we're here for, to be for one another, is to be the invitations into pathways for one another, and the ones who open to pathways from one another that might make life so much bigger and deeper and full of what we care about.
So funny, Justin, as you're talking, the things I'm thinking of is like, on a campsite, there are families who calmly unpack their tent and slowly and organizedly arrive. And it's so different to how I would be. And what I feel like is, my gosh, I'm so interested that there's a way of doing this that isn't the way I'm doing it. Like I could get the tent out and take it really slowly and be really communicative instead of like grappling like a mad woman with a tent bag. And it's like lots of practical things occur to me of like, oh, I don't have to rush. I watch some people going really slowly and I think, and I try and like, that's one of my like major intentions in my whole life, is to slow down with whatever I'm doing. And I remember when I first had Vesper, my little one, and I had this big intention to never get the buggy out of the car in a rushed way because it's just torturous, like having a baby at the same time as a buggy and trying to get somewhere. And I feel like I've watched people and gone, okay, there's a different way. Like my way is not the way, clearly, because I'm suffering here. I'm, feeling pulled apart by the very simple task that I'm doing. And I feel so glad that there are all these different ways so that I can borrow things from the world. I can borrow what it is to calmly move through transitions in the world, which are a big challenge for me and probably anyone with small children. What can I do to cultivate a kind of slowness that doesn't demand everything of me at once and everything of everyone at once, because I don't like it? What can I do to kind of tune into the examples that I've seen of these slow-paced, quiet, straightforward, this is what we're going to do now thing? So it's also really ordinary things for me, like yes, there's lots of big things too. Like Mark Nepo is a beautiful bird for me. Oh my gosh, it's possible to sit there in one's life and come out with this beauty. Like that's available to all of us. And of course, some of us have different talents than others or whatever. But I'm allowed to receive from that possibility belongs to me too. I can write, I can sit and give birth to these extraordinary invitations to human beings. I can do that. And Mark Nepo shows me that I can do that because he's a human being too, with hands and eyes and a heart and a brain. And so I feel, I don't know, just really open today by, as you're saying, like who people can be to us. And particularly those, like feeling grateful for those ones in my life that have completely changed the direction of my life. You're one of them. You know, and also those moments have clarity to me. Like I remember talking to you for the first time and you were in an Asda car park somewhere and I can't remember where I was, but I remember you telling me that that's where you were. But I remember it as a kind of, oh, hold on a second, this man just spoke to me in the most straightforward, kind, generous, undemanding, invitational way. What the hell is that? And then that's the kind of the beginning of that bird. You swept in front of me. You were the bird swooping in front of me, and then I, obviously put the phone down, and I could have taken it as, oh wow, what a nice beginning to my day. But I didn't. I stepped into the street with you and thought, oh gosh, I'm going to have to check this out because that was an unusual conversation for me. I need to follow this bird. I need to see what it is. And of course, then the trajectory of my life and many of my relationships and all the things that I now get up to in my life are really profoundly informed by following that bird and feeling that I could experience myself as something real through you. And something in me got born by talking to you. And I think that's the really interesting thing for me is there are plenty of people whom I talk to and new things don't get born. But I want to be dedicated to when they do get born, to following that and seeing where that takes me and having faith in whatever that pattern is, whatever that groove is that's laid by the people that I meet and the things that happen, and trusting myself to follow those things, and that there will be goodness knows what, but it will be good for me. It will be life-giving. And just as this bird is an invitation, it's an invitation to something. And I feel like it's, for me, the invitation is an invitation to my bigger self, like more of me becoming available, more of my understanding of what the world is and who I am. And through people, that seems to be how my world has grown, from quite a small one to one that I feel now is connected in all kinds of different ways.
I'm really it's lovely hearing you. I remember the conversation in the Asda car park very well. But I also remember how meeting you has been a bird, I mean, in so many ways along the years, but even then, Lizzie, to me, meeting you and your whole way of being in the world, and how what's really striking me about what you're saying is this sort of combination of sometimes we know we're on the edge of a bigness that we might follow. Right. I mean, my life in so many dimensions is different because we're up to the thing that we're up to together. So many ways. And I'm what you're reminding me about is the also the ordinary everyday. You were talking about setting up a tent. I was thinking about how I begin my day. That probably, like most of us, at various times in my life, I've had a very familiar way to begin my day. Don't even have to think about it. I get up and I make breakfast first, or I don't, or I have a shower first and I get dressed in this order and I go at a certain pace and I've got certain kinds of thoughts and feelings going on and all of that. And that seeing that there's a different way, that just like the putting the tent up or getting the buggy out of the car, we can learn from one another, oh, there's a different way to do just that part, that might be, I suppose, what I'm also thinking about, that you're drawing my attention to. It's so brilliant from this poem. We don't always know what is a bird, but we could have our eyes out for it, and we could be willing to at least go far enough to find out if it might be the kind of thing where there's a decision to be made about what kind of appointment to keep. But a lot of the time it's easy to go, I didn't even notice it. But shifting how you put up the tent or take the buggy out of the car, Or actually, I'm just thinking about when our three were little, just making a small change in the way I would respond to something that happened, noticing a place where I would get triggered or activated and want something to be a particular way and get frustrated or even angry or dispirited or despairing or panicked, or all of those things that can happen in a moment because it took us too long to get out of the house, or because the kitchen was a mess, or because I didn't have enough sleep, or because that small shifts in that we learn from one another can be birds too. And we can ignore them and go, got to get to work. Or we can go, oh, and life can change, not just on the life-changing scale that you and I are talking about in You and I, of having met one another and all that got born from following those birds. Our life can also change for the good from the birds that show up in the ordinary, everyday, small moves that we're making. Every one of those can be a bird that opens up a path that we didn't imagine. And it's a great relief to me, because I realized that I came into this poem feeling the bigness of it. My goodness, what path might I, and what might that involve? What might I have to leave behind of a whole life?
Yeah.
And that does happen, but maybe for many of us, where it really happens and where the greatest life-giving opportunity to happen is right in the. We've been talking for weeks in various ways about the sacredness of the ordinary everyday, not in some great promised for revolutionary enlightenment or something, but and that's very hope making.
Yeah, I'm appreciating that this can be at any scale. This can be for just right here, as you're saying, in the very, very ordinary, one foot in front of the other kind of way. And also, who knows, and I'm sure there are many of us for whom the bird has swooped in and you've gone, hey, now everything's different. And then you don't know how to be anymore, or who to be, or how to walk forward, or how to do anything, because that bird arriving just means all kinds of huge consequences and changes. And so I'm appreciating this incredible piece of artfulness by Mark Nepo to be able to reach us in all the different scales of our lives.
Well, thank you, Lizzie. As always, I feel like these conversations, for me, every one of them is like a bird. It's a chance to follow that we haven't planned this, means that every moment of listening and speaking is a chance to follow a bird and see if it will take us to the edge of something, and see if we want to go beyond. And it's very, very joyful to have a practice with you that can be that, and also very joyful to all of you who are with us that you're part of this too. And I know that for many other people, these conversations are birds in this way as well. So thank you, everyone, for being with us. A reminder that you're very welcome to be in contact with us. If you're in our Facebook group, you can say hello. You can email us, hello@turningtowards.life, or Lizzie or Justin at turningtowards.life. And if you're the kind of person who likes doing things like this, you can leave reviews on, particularly I think on Apple Podcasts, and that helps us helps people find their way to us, which is something that we'd be very pleased about. And we are planning on keeping going. So all being well, we will be back here next week, Lizzie, with a source that you're going to choose for us. And we'll see you then.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Bye.